Have you ever wondered why the money in your pocket seems to buy less and less each year? It feels like a modern problem, right? But what if I told you this isn't new at all? In fact, the playbook for destroying an economy through inflation was written 2,000 years ago by the Roman Empire. And the scariest part is, we're following it almost step by step. This is the story of how Rome invented inflation, and why we are still paying the price for the lessons they refused to learn. Stick around, because understanding this ancient mistake might just be the key to protecting your own wealth today. It all started with a coin, a small silver coin called the denarius. For centuries, this was more than just money. It was the bedrock of the Roman world. From the markets of Britannia to the ports of Egypt, the denarius was trusted. Why? Because it had real, intrinsic value. A denarius was made of nearly pure silver. When you held one, you were holding a tangible piece of wealth. This trust was the superpower that fueled Rome's expansion and its incredible economic engine. It paid the legions, built the aqueducts, and funded a global trade network the world had never seen. The denarius was, in essence, the dollar, the euro, and the yen of the ancient world all rolled into one. It was the symbol of Roman power and reliability. But this symbol of strength held a hidden vulnerability, one that ambitious and desperate emperors would soon exploit. So how did it all start to go wrong? 2 words: military overspending. The Roman Empire was vast, and defending its borders was incredibly expensive. The legions were the largest item on the state budget, and their loyalty had to be bought, often with promises of land and hefty bonuses. But by the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, the empire had stopped expanding. The flow of new conquests, new slaves, and new gold mines dried up. Suddenly, Rome's expenses far outstripped its income. Emperors like Nero, and many who followed, faced a dilemma. How do you pay for a massive army and lavish public projects when the treasury is empty? Raising taxes was deeply unpopular and could lead to revolt. The solution they found was deceptively simple and catastrophically brilliant. They decided to debase the currency. Here's how it worked. The Roman mint would take in old pure silver coins. They would melt them down, mix in a cheaper base metal like copper, and then mint a larger number of new coins from the same amount of silver. So, let's say you could originally make 10 denarii from a pound of silver. Now, by adding copper, maybe you could make 12, or 15, or 20. From the emperor's perspective, this was magic. He had just created money out of thin air. He could now pay the soldiers, fund his projects, and keep the people happy with bread and circuses. On the surface, the new coins looked almost the same. But their intrinsic value was gone. This was the birth of government-led inflation, and it was a secret tax on every single person in the empire. At first, nobody really noticed. A coin is a coin, right? But soon, the market, which is smarter than any emperor, began to figure it out. Merchants and shopkeepers realized that the new denarii didn't contain as much silver. So what did they do? They started demanding more coins for the same goods. The price of wheat, olive oil, and wine began to creep up. Then it started to gallop. This process, which we now call inflation, was a slow-motion robbery of the Roman people. Anyone who had saved their money, who had trusted the value of the denarius, saw their life savings evaporate. A soldier's pension that could have bought a small farm a generation earlier could now barely buy a few sacks of grain. The middle class was hollowed out. The poor were pushed into destitution. The government's short-term solution had become the people's long-term nightmare. Wealth wasn't just being redistributed. It was being destroyed. As trust in the denarius collapsed, so did the entire Roman economy. Think about it. If you're a merchant selling grain from Egypt to Rome, you're paid in denarii. But if you know that by the time you get home, those coins will be worth half as much, would you still make the trip? Many decided it wasn't worth the risk. Long-distance trade, the lifeblood of the empire, began to seize up. The intricate network of commerce that connected millions of people started to unravel. People reverted to barter. A farmer would trade his wheat directly for a craftsman's tools, cutting out money altogether. This might sound simple, but it's incredibly inefficient. It sent the economy hurtling backward. Cities, which depended on trade for food and goods, began to shrink. Confidence wasn't just lost in the money. It was lost in the future. The economic glue that held the Roman world together was dissolving. Facing economic chaos, what did the government do? Did they reverse course and restore the currency? No, they doubled down. In the year 301 AD, Emperor Diocletian decided he could solve the problem by sheer force. He issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, a sweeping decree that set fixed prices for thousands of goods and services across the entire empire. He also fixed wages. The penalty for charging more than the official price? Death. It was the most ambitious price control scheme in history, and it was a complete and utter failure. Why? Because you can't repeal the law of supply and demand. If the government price for wheat was below what it cost the farmer to grow it, the farmer would simply stop selling it on the open market. Goods disappeared from the shelves and reappeared on the black market at much higher prices. The edict, meant to stop the economic bleeding, only made it worse. It created massive shortages and punished the very producers the empire relied on. It was a classic case of a government trying to fix a problem it created with even more destructive intervention. Now this is where the story gets really uncomfortable. Does any of this sound familiar? Rome's denarius was a silver-backed currency. For most of history, our money was too, backed by gold or silver. But in 1971, the world moved to a system of fiat money. Fiat money is currency that a government has declared to be legal tender, but it isn't backed by a physical commodity. Its value comes entirely from the faith and credit of the government that issues it. This gives modern governments the same superpower Roman emperors discovered: the ability to create money out of thin air. When governments print more money to pay for their spending, it's called quantitative easing or stimulus, but the effect is the same as debasing the denarius. It dilutes the value of all the existing money in circulation. It's a hidden tax that quietly transfers wealth from savers and wage earners to the government, and those who get the new money first. We are living in a global Roman-style experiment with fiat currency, and we're seeing the same results: rising prices and a slow erosion of our purchasing power. Ultimately, the story of Rome teaches us a timeless lesson. Inflation is a disease that rots societies from the inside. It's not just an economic phenomenon. It's a social and moral one. When a government destroys its own currency, it destroys trust. It punishes savers and rewards debtors. It pits citizens against each other and erodes the social fabric. It encourages short-term thinking and speculation instead of long-term investment and production. The economic instability created by inflation in Rome was a major factor in its eventual decline and fall. It weakened the state, impoverished the people, and made the empire vulnerable to internal and external threats. History shows us again and again that no society can survive the debasement of its money for long. It is the silent killer of empires. So the next time you hear politicians talking about printing more money to solve our problems, remember the denarius. Remember the Roman merchant who couldn't trust his own money and the Roman soldier whose life savings turned to dust. The technology has changed, but the temptation and the consequences have not. Understanding this ancient story isn't just a history lesson. It's a critical tool for navigating the world we live in today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey back in time insightful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that connect the past to our present. Let me know in the comments what you think. Are we repeating Rome's mistakes? See you in the next video.